The grand ballroom glittered with gold and crystal, the kind of extravagance most people only saw in magazines or
Another
movies.
successful deal.
The guests moved like stars on a carefully choreographed stage,
To us.
laughing, swirling, exchanging business cards, champagne, and gossip with the same practiced precision. And in the midst of it all, she tried to disappear. Clara Bennett had a simple strategy: dress plain, avoid the lights, keep her back to the crowd. A muted navy dress that hugged nothing, hair pinned loosely, shoes practical, no jewelry, nothing flashy, nothing that could draw attention. Because attention was dangerous, and Clara preferred invisible, she counted on it. She moved along the edge of the room, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor, her senses alert. She was a ghost among billionaires, heirs, heiresses, and socialites who made a sport of power. Tonight she wasn't supposed to matter, and yet, from across the room he saw her, Alexander Kane, billionaire, investor, unreachable. Cold reputation, colder heart, or so the tabloids said. He rarely noticed anyone not in his inner circle, not the women who trailed him in magazines, not the socialites who whispered his name. But she, something about her halted him. Not her beauty, not in the obvious glittering way most women tried to compete with, but something quieter, something invisible, almost imperceptible. She was dressed to be ignored, and yet, she radiated a presence impossible to overlook. He watched as she moved, small, careful steps, hands folded, eyes downcast. There was no confidence in her posture, on the surface, and yet he couldn't look away. Alexander's assistant nudged him gently. "Sir, the event?" He shook his head, eyes still fixed on Clara. "I see her," he said simply, "the one no one sees." Clara, completely unaware, edged toward the refreshment table, hoping to blend into the shadows. She didn't notice the hush in the room as Alexander Kane's gaze followed her. She didn't notice the sudden tension in the air, or the way he walked toward her, his presence stretching across the floor like a gravitational pull. When he stopped a few feet away, Clara finally looked up, and then froze. Alexander Kane was closer than anyone should be, taller than she expected, impeccably dressed, and studying her with the kind of intensity that felt like it could see through her skin. "I usually ignore these things," he said, voice low, smooth, deliberate. "But I couldn't ignore you." Clara blinked. "Me? You," he said. "You're invisible." "But not really. That's the interesting part." Her pulse quickened. I'm not trying to be dressed to be ignored," he finished for her, his lips curling into a small, enigmatic smile. "It's remarkable. And intriguing." Clara swallowed, unsure if she should be flattered, terrified, or furious. She had never been intriguing to anyone like him before. Not the ones with power, influence, money. Certainly not a billionaire who could have anyone in the room if he wished. "I don't usually," she started, but he interrupted. "I know," Alexander said. "You try to fade away, I see it. Most people don't." She felt her defenses rise, automatically. "And why do you see me?" "Because," he said simply, "some things can't be ignored, and some people choose not to be invisible, even when they think they are." Clara's chest tightened. She wanted to step back, to return to the safety of the crowd, to vanish into her strategy of invisibility. But there was something about the way he looked at her, unflinching, unyielding, that made her pause. "You don't belong here," she said softly, almost to herself. Alexander's eyes softened slightly. "Maybe not, but I think you do, even if you don't realize it." Her lips parted, and for a moment she simply stared. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever noticed the invisible details she relied on to survive. "You have courage," he said, voice low, compelling, magnetic. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind people rarely recognize until it's too late. Clara felt something stir deep in her chest, a flutter of something unfamiliar. Connection, intrigue, the thrill of being seen. You're different, she said, voice trembling. And you're the same, he replied. Quiet, careful, underestimated, yet impossibly compelling. Something in her shifted. The event, the noise, the glittering crowd, all of it faded. She felt herself standing taller, breath-catching, heart racing, because for the first time, someone powerful, untouchable, and impossible had looked at her, and truly seen her. Alexander Kane, billionaire, legend, untouchable, captured by the woman dressed to be ignored. And Clara, she realized with a thrill that made her pulse leap, that she had captured him instantly. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she picked up her glass of water, trying to steady herself. Her pulse still thumped in her ears from the intensity of Alexander Kane's gaze. She had told herself countless times that blending in was safer, that invisibility was her shield, her armor. But now she wasn't invisible anymore, and that scared her. Alexander had moved closer, though he hadn't forced the interaction. Just the space he claimed, careful, controlled, deliberate, made her hyper-aware of every inch of herself. Her hair, pinned loosely, seemed suddenly messy. Her muted navy dress felt almost too revealing under his scrutiny. Her hands fidgeted around the stem of her glass. "You don't have to be nervous," he said quietly, voice calm but filled with a weight that made her chest tighten. "I'm not nervous," she replied, though her voice cracked despite her effort. His lips curled into the faintest smirk. "You're lying, but it's fine. I prefer honesty anyway." Clara blinked. "You prefer honesty?" she repeated, incredulous. Most people are performers," he finished for her. "I see through it. And I see through you, too. That's what's dangerous." Clara's throat went dry. "Dangerous?" He nodded, eyes glinting. "Yes. To me, to you, maybe to both of us." She wanted to look away, to retreat to the crowd, to vanish like she always did. But her feet wouldn't obey. Her body felt rooted to the floor, and in that stillness she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to move. Alexander studied her for a moment longer. "I usually don't approach women like this," he said softly. "I don't notice most people. But you're different. You weren't trying to be seen. And yet, here you are." Clara swallowed. "I don't usually," her words faltered. I try not to be noticed. And yet," he said, "you caught my attention instantly. That tells me a lot. About you." She felt her pulse spike. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "Why me, out of all the people here?" Alexander's gaze lingered on her, steady, intense. "Because most people are obvious, loud, trying too hard. You're quiet, you don't pretend. And that intrigues me." Clara's breath hitched. Intrigue, attention, power. None of these were things she was used to receiving, not from anyone, and certainly not from a man like Alexander Kane, untouchable billionaire, legend in his own right. I don't know what to say," she admitted, heart pounding. "Then say nothing," he said. "Just stay as you are." Her pulse raced at the weight of his woe. RDS. Stay as you are. It sounded simple, almost safe, but in his presence, it was anything but. "You're careful," he continued, voice soft, almost conspiratorial. "Careful to blend in, careful to remain invisible. And yet you've made yourself the most visible person in this room. To me." Clara's cheeks flushed. She looked down, hoping he couldn't see the way her hands shook. "I didn't mean to." "Doesn't matter," he said. "Effect matters more than intent." She blinked. "Effect?" "Yes," he said, stepping slightly closer, though still careful. "You have an effect on me. Subtle, yes, but undeniable. And now that I've noticed it, I can't unsee it." Her stomach fluttered, the careful, measured words, the intensity in his eyes, the calm assurance he carried. It all drew her in, magnetic and unavoidable. She tried to remind herself that he was dangerous, unpredictable, untouchable, and yet, the pull between them was undeniable. "You're bold," she whispered, barely audible. "To say these things. I'm honest," he corrected, "and honesty is rare, especially tonight." Her pulse raced. She wanted to retreat. She wanted to vanish, slip away into the safety of the shadows, but her body refused. Her gaze met his, and for the first time, Clara realized something terrifying. She wanted him to stay. Alexander tilted his head, watching her, sensing her hesitation, feeling the subtle signals that no one else could see. "Do you know what's most interesting?" he asked. "You think you're invisible, but that's what makes you impossible to ignore." Clara's chest tightened. She tried to respond, to push back, to reclaim the cautious boundaries she had so carefully maintained. I don't..." He stepped just slightly closer, his hand brushing against the small of her back. Not forcefully, but gently, guiding, grounding her. The brush sent a shiver through her. "Shh," he said softly. "You don't have to explain. Just feel this." Her pulse raced. The room, the crowd, the glittering extravagance around them, all disappeared. There was only him, only this impossible connection, only the quiet thrill of being seen in a way she had never been seen before. Clara realized, in a moment that was both exhilarating and terrifying, that her careful strategy to be unnoticed had failed spectacularly, and she didn't care. "I feel it," she whispered, voice trembling. Alexander's lips curved almost imperceptibly, but it made her heart skip. "Good," he murmured, "because I felt it from the moment I saw you, and now that I have, I won't ignore it." Her chest tightened, heart hammering. This was dangerous, tempting, everything she had sworn to avoid, and yet, she wanted it, wanted him, wanted the attention, the intensity, the thrill of being truly seen by someone who could see through everything else. She began, unsure of how to articulate the storm of emotions inside her. Alexander smiled, just slightly, leaning closer. "Don't speak, just stay. Let this happen, and see where it leads. Or once, let yourself be seen, completely, and trust me, I won't let go." Clara's breath caught. Her pulse surged. She realized fully that in trying to be invisible, she had captured the attention of the most unattainable man in the room. The man who, in an instant, had turned her world upside down without so much as touching her fully. And she felt it, thrilling, terrifying, intoxicating, because in this room filled with the rich, the famous, and the powerful, she had become impossible to ignore, and Alexander Kane's heart, for reasons she didn't yet understand, had been captured instantly. The gala's chatter faded behind them as Alexander led Clara away from the crowd. The staff and glittering guests, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the hum of forced laughter became distant, muted. Out of sight, in a quieter corner of the sprawling mansion, the room seemed smaller, warmer, and somehow more dangerous. Clara's pulse raced. Her hands twisted around the small clutch she held, and her heart hammered in her chest, not just from fear, but from the undeniable intensity of being near him. She wanted to disappear, to shrink, to retreat into the safety of invisibility. But she didn't. Her body, against her will, seemed drawn to him. Alexander leaned against the wall, just close enough to be commanding, just distant enough to let her breathe. His dark eyes studied her, tracing the lines of her jaw, the curve of her lips, the way she tried to shrink into herself without entirely succeeding. "You're remarkable," he said quietly, "even when you try not to be." Clara swallowed hard. I don't know what you mean." He tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "You think you're invisible, that no one notices, that blending into the crowd is safety." "It is," she said softly, voice trembling. No, he corrected gently. It isn't. Not tonight. Not to me. Her chest tightened. I didn't mean, I wasn't. You're not a performer, he said, stepping slightly closer, the warmth of his presence brushing against her. Not like the others. You're real. And that's rare. She felt her cheeks flush. Rare. Real. His words were disarming, dangerous in their simplicity. She had spent years hiding, shrinking, convincing herself that invisibility was safety. But with Alexander Kane, invisibility didn't exist. Clara tried to shift, to create space, but he subtly blocked it with just the lean of his shoulder against the wall. His presence was magnetic, drawing her in despite her instinct to retreat. Why me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Out of all the people here, why notice me? Because, he said, voice low and deliberate, you don't ask to be noticed. And yet, here you are. You caught my attention the moment you walked in, and that is dangerous. Clara's pulse surged. Dangerous? To me, he said softly. And to you, if you let it. Her breath hitched. She wanted to pull away, to remind herself of the distance between them. But her limbs used. The pull toward him was magnetic, undeniable. I'm not, she began, but he interrupted. Shh, he murmured, stepping closer, close enough that the air between them seemed to hum. You don't have to speak. Just feel this. Clara felt it, every nerve alive, every pulse quickened, every instinct screaming. Her careful invisibility, her shields, her walls, they crumbled in the presence of a man who saw her fully, who refused to ignore her, who fascinated her in ways she had never experienced. You're bold, she whispered, barely audible. To come here, like this. I'm honest, he said, voice smooth, magnetic. And honesty is rare, especially tonight. Her pulse raced. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said, voice dropping, intense, low, enough to know that I want to. Her heart stuttered. Want to what? Want to see her? Want to speak to her? Want to. The thought made her stomach flip, heat rising, breath catching. She had never experienced anything like this, not with anyone, not in all her careful, invisible years. Alexander studied her, reading her hesitation, her intrigue, her fear. You're trembling, he observed. And it's not fear of me, is it? Clara's hands tightened around the clutch in her lap. I don't know, she admitted. Good, he murmured, stepping even closer, the warmth of his body now brushing hers. It's honesty. And I prefer honesty over pretension. Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed to pull back, to retreat, to hide. Something inside her wanted the opposite, to step closer, to lean in, to see where this tension, this energy could lead. Alexander's hand hovered near hers almost teasingly, and yet charged with power. He didn't touch, not yet, but the implication was electric. Every nerve in her body sang. You're thinking of running, he said softly, voice coaxing yet firm. I can see it, but you won't. Not tonight. Not from me. Clara's eyes widened. How did he know? How did he see her so clearly? I don't even know your intentions, she whispered. Neither do you, he replied. But you feel this. I see it. I do too. The room, the crowd, the gala, all of it faded. There was only him, only her, only the quiet storm between them. And for the first time, Clara realized that being invisible was no longer an option or a desire. I feel it, she breathed. I can't ignore it. Alexander's lips curved almost imperceptibly, but enough to make her pulse spike. Good, he whispered, because I won't. Then finally he closed the distance, brushing a finger lightly against her wrist, a delicate, fleeting touch that set her nerves alight. It wasn't a kiss, it wasn't possession, but it was an undeniable promise. He had noticed her. He had chosen her attention. Clara's hands trembled as they met his, and she realized fully and terrifyingly that her careful strategy of invisibility had failed. And she didn't care. For the first time, she wanted to be seen. and Alexander Kane, billionaire unto untouchable, extraordinary, wanted to see her completely. In the quiet of the empty side room, away from the gala's prying eyes, Clara realized a truth that terrified and exhilarated her at the same time. She had captured his attention, his fascination, and maybe his heart, and she didn't know if she was ready for the consequences. But she also didn't want to run, because sometimes being noticed by the right person at the right moment changed everything. And Clara Bennett, dressed to be ignored, had changed Alexander Kane's heart instantly. The gala had ended hours ago, but Clara still couldn't shake the energy from Alexander's attention. Every polite smile and whispered conversation in the ballroom paled in comparison to the intensity of being seen by him. Completely, undeniably. She thought she could retreat into her apartment, into solitude, back into her carefully cultivated invisibility. But Alexander Kane had other plans. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'll wait for you downstairs. Don't make me leave without saying goodnight." Clara's pulse jumped. She knew immediately it was him. That single line carried the weight of command disguised as courtesy. She stared at the message, mind racing. Was this reckless? Bold? Both? Her instincts told her to ignore it. Her heart told her to follow it. By the time she reached the lobby, he was waiting, leaning casually against the polished marble counter, jacket slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning the space until they landed on her. The effect was electric, like a gravitational pull that left her breathless. "Good evening," he said softly, voice calm, confident, but with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "Evening," she replied, heart hammering. She tried to keep her composure, but she was painfully aware of how small she felt beside him, how unpolished, how human, how entirely visible. "You didn't answer my text," he said, tilting his head, eyes darkening with amusement. "I was worried you'd run." I almost did," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good choice," he said, stepping closer, the air between them thickening with unspoken tension. "Because I would have caught you anyway." Clara's pulse raced. The boldness of his words, the closeness of his presence, the weight of his gaze, it was thrilling and terrifying all at once. You really don't leave people alone, do you?" she asked, trying to inject levity, but her voice trembled despite her attempt at control. "Only when they matter," he replied, voice low and deliberate. "And you matter." Her chest tightened. Matter. That word, that implication, sent a thrill racing through her body. She had spent years believing she didn't matter, that she could blend into any crowd without consequence. And now, she mattered to him. Alexander's gaze swept over her again, slow, deliberate, assessing. "You're careful," he said, always calculating, always cautious. And yet, he stepped closer, close enough that the heat his body brushed hers, faint but electric. "You provoke more than anyone here. Simply by being yourself." Clara swallowed hard. I'm not sure I want to provoke you," she whispered, though the honesty of it only seemed to amuse him. "Ah," he murmured, smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "But you already have." Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed to pull back, but something deeper, unexplainable, made her lean slightly forward, closer, not intentionally, not consciously, but drawn to him, as if some invisible tether had wrapped around her heart. Alexander's hand hovered near hers, almost impossibly close yet restrained. He didn't touch, not fully, not yet, but the mere proximity sent sparks racing through her nerves. "You know," he said softly, "most people here would kill to be noticed by me. And yet, you're different, and I'm different with you." Clara's pulse quickened. "Different how? Different enough," he said, voice low, magnetic, "that I don't follow the usual rules, that I cross lines I normally wouldn't, lines I shouldn't. But with you, I want to." Her heart skipped. "Lines?" she asked, barely audible. "Yes," he replied, leaning ever so slightly closer, so the warmth of him brushed hers. Boundaries, etiquette, all the things society expects me to maintain. I'm breaking them for you. Clara's breath caught. She had never felt this way before. Noticed, exposed, yet safe. Dangerously safe, magnetic, compelling, terrifying. You're bold, she whispered. To risk that, I'm honest, he said. And with you, honesty matters more than reputation. Her pulse raced. She could feel the pull, the tension, the unspoken desire in the air. Every nerve in her body was alive, alert, reacting to the heat of him, the intensity of his attention. Alexander's hand brushed lightly against hers, not fully, not entirely, just enough to make her pulse spike and her breath hitch. Do you feel it? He asked softly. Yes, she whispered. Her voice was raw, trembling, and entirely truthful. Good, he murmured, because I do too, and I've been holding back long enough. He stepped even closer, the warmth of his body now impossible to ignore, and she realized with a thrill and a tremor in her chest that she had never been this aware of another human being, never been this seen, this wanted. You shouldn't, she whispered, voice trembling. This is reckless. I know, he replied, voice low, deliberate, magnetic. And yet, I don't care. Not tonight. Not with you. The air between them felt like electricity, charged with tension and desire. Clara's mind raced, trying to remind herself of caution, strategy, invisibility. But the pull toward him was undeniable, irresistible. You're dangerous, she murmured, heart hammering. And you, he said softly, almost a growl in the quiet lobby, are unforgettable. Clara's breath caught. The combination of his words, his proximity, his unwavering gaze, left her trembling. She realized fully that Bane, Invisible, was impossible with him, not because he forced attention, but because he made her want to be seen, fully, completely. You, she began, voice shaking, you're crossing every boundary. I am, he admitted, voice low and magnetic, leaning slightly closer. And I'm not stopping. Clara felt the pull, fierce and undeniable, and for the first time she allowed herself to stop resisting. Not fully, not yet, but enough to meet him halfway, enough to feel the heat of their connection, enough to realize she had captured his fascination, and he had captured her attention. And in that moment, Clara Bennett, dressed to be ignored, understood something powerful and dangerous. She had not only drawn him in, she had made him break the rules. And she didn't want him to stop. The elevator ride was quiet but heavy. Every second felt stretched, the air between Clara and Alexander charged with unspoken tension. She clutched her clutch tightly, fingernails pressing into the leather, trying to keep her pulse from betraying her. Alexander leaned against the mirrored wall, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her, not staring aggressively, not impatiently, but in a way that made her feel like he could see everything she was thinking, every instinct she tried to hide. You're thinking about running, he said quietly, voice low and magnetic. Clara's stomach flipped. I'm not. You are, he said, his dark eyes softening just slightly, just enough to disarm her. I can see it. You want to retreat, to disappear, to vanish into your careful invisibility. But I won't let you. Not tonight. Her breath caught. You shouldn't, you can't, she whispered. This is reckless. Reckless, he echoed, stepping closer, so close that the heat of his body brushed against hers. Maybe, or maybe it's inevitable. Clara's chest tightened. Her instincts screamed caution, but her heart betrayed her. She wanted to lean in. She wanted to meet the intensity of his attention, to feel the electricity between them fully. Alexander's hand hovered near hers, deliberate, teasing, impossible to ignore. She didn't move away, couldn't, not entirely. The invisible thread between them pulled taut. You're trembling, he said softly. And it's not fear of me, is it? I don't know, she admitted, voice barely audible. Good, he murmured. Because I don't care. Not tonight. I want you to feel it, all of it. And I want you to want me to feel it too. Her pulse spiked, heat spreading through her. She could no longer pretend invisibility was her armor. The thrill of being seen by him, the raw, unflinching attention, was intoxicating. The elevator dinged softly at her floor. Neither moved immediately, both caught in the suspended tension of proximity and desire. Do you even know what this will mean? She whispered, voice trembling. Not entirely, he admitted. But I know I don't want to stop. They stepped out into the quiet hall. The lights were dim, the world outside reduced to shadows. Alexander closed the distance fully, the warmth of his body now impossible to ignore. Clara's breath hitched as he reached for her hand, not a fleeting brush this time, but a full, possessive hold. Clara, he murmured, voice low, deliberate. I've been holding back, I've been careful, but I can't anymore. Not with you. Her heart raced. I don't know if I should. You should, he interrupted softly, leaning closer, forehead resting gently against hers. Because this is real, and I won't let it be anything less. Not for you, not for me. Her knees went weak. Every nerve, every instinct, every carefully constructed shield melted under his gaze. She wanted to speak, to resist, to remind herself of caution, but words failed her. Instead, she leaned into him, just slightly, just enough to feel the gravity of their connection. Alexander's hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing softly along her skin. The touch was deliberate, intimate, consuming. You're unforgettable, he whispered, even when you try not to be. Clara's breath caught. You shouldn't say that. I should, he corrected, voice low, magnetic. Because it's the truth, and I can't lie anymore. Not to you, not to myself. Her chest tightened. Desire, fear, exhilaration, and certainty collided inside her. She realized with shocking clarity that she had never wanted anyone or anything the way she wanted this, him, now. Alexander leaned closer, lips brushing hers lightly, a teasing, testing touch. The spark was instant, magnetic, electrifying. Clara's hands found their way to his chest, grounding herself even as desire pulled her under completely. I can't, she whispered against his lips, voice trembling. Yes, you can, he murmured, and you will. The kiss deepened, claiming, deliberate, full of unspoken promises and the intensity of the attraction that had grown between them from the first moment. It wasn't just fascination. It wasn't just intrigue. It was desire. It was connection. It was real. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Clara rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Her pulse slowly settled, though her body still hummed with heat and tension. You've crossed every line, she whispered. Alexander smiled softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I didn't just cross them, he said. I erased them, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Clara's chest tightened. And now, what? Now, he said, cupping her face in both hands, we decide, together. Rules or no rules, contract or no contract. I want you completely, and I don't want to wait another second. Her lips curved into a tentative smile. So, we're together? Yes, he confirmed, voice low, magnetic, together. And this time it's not just fascination, not just intrigue, real feelings, real attention, real connection. Clara laughed softly, a sound full of relief and disbelief. And I want that too, she admitted. Alexander's hands slid around her waist, drawing her close, a deliberate, protective, and intimate gesture. The city lights outside glimmered, but inside there was only them, only the warmth, the intensity, and the undeniable pull between two people who had discovered something neither could ignore. You've captured me, he said, voice low, husky, full of promise. from the moment I saw you, and I intend to keep you." Clara's heart soared. She realized that invisibility, safety, and blending in were no longer her goals. She wanted this, him, all of him, and she had no intention of retreating. In that moment, dressed to be ignored, Clara Bennett understood something profound. Some connections couldn't be hidden, some hearts couldn't be ignored, and some people, no matter how carefully they tried to vanish, could capture the attention of someone extraordinary. And Alexander Kane, billionaire, untouchable, commanding, had done just that. He had crossed every line, and Clara had led him. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.